Thank you so much for coming, all you wonderful CUNY students, CUNY administrators, New York tech community in general. I'm so honored to be, look at this beautiful venue we're in. I mean, how amazing is this for us to be here? This is really great. For those of you who, how many people have been to CUNY Tech Meetup before? Oh my, come on. I love that. I love that. Mostly people who have been here before. That's awesome. Well, for one, you know I always say, if you enjoyed tonight, I encourage you to tell your friends, your CUNY friends, your CUNY students, administrators, professors, anything CUNY, but also our larger tech community friends who are interested in supporting CUNY. So as you know, we started this whole CUNY Tech Meetup to bring CUNY students and the CUNY school together with the New York Tech, the broader New York Tech community. So I think we're over 2,000 members now, so let's give ourselves a round of applause there. That's awesome. And I want to say something about this evening tonight. So 3 years ago, when we had our first, when we had our first year of CUNY Tech Meetup finish, our next speaker and my good friend, John Farmer, you know, really reached out to me and said, you know, I want to support this this CUNY community with you, Don. So how can we go about doing that? So John and his team have been sponsoring our end of year sort of big blowout CUNY Tech Meetup all 3 years, and this year's no exception. We do it a little bit differently than we do throughout the year. John focuses on civic innovation and cities and civic-minded use of technology. So that's the end of year, you know, that's what the end of year CUNY Tech Meetup focuses on. We started off with civic tech, and last year was urban tech, and this year it's GovTech. There's a lot of overlap in all of those, but I'd say the main thread is that, you know, John focuses on this all day, and I like us to think about it all the time. Whether you're creating tech, whether you're creating companies, we really need to always focus on, can it be helpful and useful for people? So I'll let John talk more about what he's doing on the Microsoft side, but this evening is always devoted to that. And so with that in mind, we really have an amazing lineup of speakers. I feel honored to be in Brooklyn. I am a Manhattan gal, so I gotta say I don't venture to Brooklyn as much as I should, but we've got a great tech community here in Brooklyn, and I'm really honored that they're partnering with us and giving us this beautiful, you know, almost stately, regal space to hold our event this evening. And we are going to hear from the Brooklyn Borough President a little bit later. But for now, I want to introduce and to thank our sponsor and my friend, John Farmer, who runs the New York Microsoft Cities component of Microsoft, and who's our sponsor and our support here at CUNY Tech Meetup for tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Thanks for opening it up, but also thanks for convening us all here tonight in this incredible place. We would not be in Brooklyn Borough Hall if not for Dawn doing this year and all the years past. So thank you for your efforts year in and year out. So I work on something called Microsoft Cities, and the whole idea here is that places like New York City are hotbeds for innovation. There's so much going on here, and we're all so fortunate to be here. And so the reason that Microsoft created this team was to embed people like me in these communities so that we can work across sectors, that we can work with the universities and the foundations and the startups and the local government. And so two of those that I just mentioned are absolutely essential. One being local government, the other being the universities. And I'm really happy to be involved with so many of the good things that are coming out of CUNY. A couple of them are working on the Data Science Advisory Board, but also a really innovative approach that we took last year, working in collaboration with New York City's Tech Talent Pipeline initiative that the mayor started, and City Tech, just here, a few blocks away here in Brooklyn, to create a program called Tech Jobs Academy to help people who didn't have access to the tech community, didn't have the financial wherewithal to get those skills, maybe didn't have the time to actually go get a degree, to get rapid reskilling. So in a matter of months, not years, they could get the tech skills that could change their lives. And what we saw was pretty amazing. 94% of the graduates who looked for jobs got them, and the average salary went from $9,000 a year beforehand to $47,000 a year afterwards. And so that's an example of the kinds of things that we can do when we work together across sectors: governmental, academic, and private sector. And so moving on, I was in Pittsburgh a couple of days ago, which is actually where I grew up. And who has been to Pittsburgh? Anyone? Yeah, oh my, I had no idea that, what was that, 35, 40% of this room has been to Pittsburgh? It's amazing. Well, Pittsburgh's recovered a lot better than a lot of Rust Belt cities. It's really transitioned to a new economy a lot better than a lot of Rust Belt cities. And so the speech that I gave talked about brownfields. And so a brownfield is a term in city planning for a former industrial site that was often contaminated. So when you think of a steel mill, those were brownfields. And there had to be a lot of investment in actually cleaning that land up. And it usually didn't make sense for any individual private company to do that. You have to spend all that money cleaning out the toxins from the land before you can actually start building something. So you needed to have collaboration between the public and private sectors. And that's one of the things that helped Pittsburgh recover so well. And in the talk I gave, what I proposed to people was that they not simply stop at looking at physical sites as brownfields, but they start looking at our organizations, our social fabric, everything about our lives, everything around us as a brownfield, as something that can be made better. And there are barriers. That's the thing about a brownfield. It's not easy. If it were easy, it'd be a greenfield. But the brownfields are hard. You actually have to do something. You have to fix things. And so what I'm going to propose to all of you as you listen to these incredible speakers tonight, as you hear about the projects that BetaNYC has done, a local nonprofit, working in collaboration with my team at Microsoft, but also the Manhattan Borough President's Office, when you hear about what 18F is doing within our federal government, think about those brownfields that each of these groups are addressing. And as you think about your own careers, to the CUNY students in the room, think about those brownfields, again, physical, social, economic, whatever they might be, all around us. And think about how you and your skill sets can actually make a difference, because they can. And it's just about finding that problem that you're passionate about solving and doing it. So really, really excited to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. We are thrilled to see you all again. Hope to see you next year. But in the meantime, let's have a fantastic hour in this amazing space. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you so much, John. All right, so our next speaker is, John referenced 18F. I'm actually not going to tell you about what that is if you don't know, but John, in addition to all the other things he's done in his life, and professional baseball player was actually one of them, but that's a whole other CUNY Tech meetup. He started something called the Presidential Innovation Fellows in the Obama administration at the White House, and 18F, this program that our next speaker is part of that and was born out of that. So our next speaker is one of the Innovation Fellows and one of the 18F members currently, and we're very pleased to have her here this evening, and I'm going to let her tell you what she does. Alex Bisker, please come up. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dawn. So I'm Alex Bisker. I'm the acting director of the Custom Partner Solutions business unit of 18F. That's a lot of letters all at once to get out there. Who's familiar with 18F here in the room? We got some hands. So for those that aren't, we are not the latest fighter jet to come out. We get that sometimes. We're also not a two-factor authentication PIN code coming out. We are we're an office inside of the General Services Administration, the GSA, within the federal government. We are a group of federal employees that are working with other agencies across the federal government to improve services to the public through technology. So that looks kind of different depending on what agency we're working with. For a lot of times, it's opening data sets right? So for the Department of Education, for example, with our college scorecard product, that meant combining information around higher ed institutions with student loan information and putting those data sets together to give some more context to students that are looking at potential colleges, also putting an API together there. That can also look like, on the flip side, with FBI, we launched the Crime Data Explorer earlier this year, which takes a lot of pretty heavy crime data that was pretty inaccessible, locked in some spreadsheets that took 6 hours to download the spreadsheet themselves, and puts it out to the public. And more importantly, it puts an API out to the public that allows any researcher, from academics to journalists to law enforcement, to kind of pull that data and apply it to their own research. Other instances of the kind of the work that we've done are with the Federal Election Commission, with FEC. We've helped them kind of take a look at their website and overhaul it over the last 3 years so that it's actually navigable by the layperson, and actually improving that experience for the user. Doesn't hurt that we're also using some more modern hosting practices that save them about $1 million annually, so they like that as well. Always goes over. But I want to take a pause here and kind of step back from some of our slick products because it can sound really like exciting, of like, oh, we're these like super crazy tech people that come from Silicon Valley and go fix everything in the government, and that's just a really bad narrative to talk about government. We've all heard the horror stories of federal government with the waste that happens, millions and millions of dollars going into projects that never launch, floppies being used to store very important data in 2017. But the idea that there are these, we're going to go in and fix these problems, waving our hands around and like sprinkling APIs magically across the land and doing a commit here and then everything's going to be fixed, is just not realistic, right? We're not going to come in there and solve the problems of government with technology, right? We're going to solve the problems of government with people. And that's where 18F steps in, and that's when we do our best work. We're partnering with these federal agencies. FEC, it's great. They have a really pretty site, and it's nice to look at that product. But the real story behind that is not actually the pretty site that you see. It's the 3 years of working with that partner agency and helping them see how they can actually talk to their users being you and me, like the general public, and figuring out what those users need and how to serve them better. Basically giving those folks the tools that they need to actually answer to the public. And that's been a really interesting experience for me, coming from the private sector, thinking that technology is going to solve all these things, and it's not. The public servants that are already in these agencies know what they need to do their mission. They just need to be empowered with the right tools and methodologies to meet their users. So I just want to put it out there that if anybody ever comes to you and talks about 18F or our partner organization, USDS, United States Digital Service, and talks to you about this hero narrative, I want you to stop it in its tracks and be like, no, nobody at 18F wears capes. We don't do that. We build the hammers, we build the tools to allow our partner agencies to build the houses that we build government upon. So less capes, more work gloves, and we're hiring, so you should all come talk to me afterwards. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we can't get more GovTech than that, can we? That's kind of the heart of it. And, I have to say that for the CUNY students in the room, I want you to really take Alex up on her offer and go and talk to her. All these speakers this evening, I feel honored, actually, to have them, some of them as my friends, certainly as my associates, to have generously come this evening and actually enthusiastically wanted to support the CUNY community. Okay, as I said before, we are so fortunate to be housed here in this regal building. This is the oldest building, I believe, in Brooklyn, and this beautiful courtroom. We're here because our Brooklyn Borough president has partnered with CUNY Tech Meetup for this event this evening, and we're really grateful that has happened. And our Brooklyn Borough president is someone who maybe he's not necessarily a technology guy himself. I'm not sure he codes. I don't know. We'll have to ask him. But as I said at the top of the evening, he works tirelessly for people. So I want us to build technology for people. He's actually on the ground every day working for the people of Brooklyn. So although he may not be a technologist, he's supporting us and supporting the people of Brooklyn and our technology community here in Brooklyn and the innovation that goes on here, as he does with all the residents of Brooklyn. So I'm so honored to present our Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here in your building. Just out of curiosity, how many are here for the first time? We present that question often throughout the 3 years and 11 months and 11 days, and oftentimes we get that response. This building for so long has been just a structure that you walk by, and we want to change that. We want to use it as a place where folks can come in and just cross-pollinate and come up with great ideas on how do we deal with the issues that we are facing as human beings, as members of the greatest race alive, and that's the human race. And it is imperative that what we do here, as I say, no matter how bright you are, you were given a lie in school when they told you Galileo said the center of the universe was the sun. It's Brooklyn. It's Brooklyn. And the way goes Brooklyn, goes New York. The way goes New York goes America, and the way goes America goes the globe. It starts right here in Brooklyn. 2.6 million people, 47% of them speak a language other than English at home. The real classroom is not in the sterilized environment of a college campus or a public or elementary or middle school or high school. The real classroom is in the communities. Juan Gonzalez, one of the great writers of the Daily News, he had a book that said, roll down your window, so you could absorb all the energy that comes from this borough in this city. And what you are doing with this cross-pollination of ideas and technology is so important. People are in pain, and they're hurting. And each new invention that you find to deal with some of the global problems that we're having, of just clean water, clothing, insect repelling, food, all of these new ideas is going to impact the lives of people. And this is so important, what you are doing and how you move this conversation forward. And nothing is more exciting than now. When you look at the exploration they're doing in Geneva with the God particle and what that means, and quantum physics, the ability for us to be in one place, more than one place at one time, and our thoughts are the same. And the invention they did in Geneva, Switzerland, where they took two pieces of matter and separated 7 miles apart and impact one piece of the matter, and simultaneously the other piece was impacted. The things that are available for those who are willing to step out of the comfort zone and to unlearn what we learned so we can learn. The reason that many of these great inventions are remaining silent is because so many people want to stay within the comfort zone of only learning what they learn. But you're saying hell no to that. We're willing to push the envelope, willing to say not what is, but what's possible. And in the process, lives are going to be saved. We have a project that we're doing here in Brooklyn that I'm so excited about. You always hear this concept of food desert. We hooked up with this great young group of inventors that they have a product called Farm Shelf, about the size of a simple refrige. And it grows 150 heads of lettuce a month. We're giving school children the ability to put it inside one of the elementary schools in Brownsville, where they're going to learn how to build the machines, fix the machine, and grow the lettuce, and then they're going to adopt a housing project in Brownsville, the pink houses, and they're going to give each family 2 heads of lettuce apiece. and then scale up to 2 heads of lettuce, 2 heads of kale, 2 heads of spinach. So the children are then going to figure out the distribution process and learn how to sell to the stores in their community. And then we're going to go to another elementary school and adopt another public housing until the problem of having a food desert is going to be just the opposite. And the children are going to give the answers to the problem of what is impacting their communities in a very real way. We're looking at hydroponics, aquaponics, showing how we can grow food right inside a classroom and really changing the concept of urban farming. And there's still things we have to figure out, but we're getting there slowly. And the answers lie in this room. Then we're giving money out to a great project where they're using clothing to gauge body responses in diabetes and other issues that are impacting people in health, and how the clothing could be used to do so. We're building greenhouses where folks never knew anything about having fresh fruits and vegetables. They used to think one of the vegetable food groups was ketchup. One young person that we building the greenhouses in Clinton, in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, the young man started growing his fruits, his vegetables, and he said, I never used to eat vegetables before until I grew it. And now my mother's not saying, make sure you eat your vegetables. I'm asking my mother, where are my vegetables? Changing mindsets is what we are doing. That is what we must do in the borough of Brooklyn. More than a tree must grow in Brooklyn. Great ideas must grow in Brooklyn. And when you come together and cross-pollinate your ideas, and don't allow the historical, ethnic blockage of those ideas to get in our way. I'll never forget, as I close, about 2 years ago, I was down in Alabama. My family owns a lot of property there, and the tractor broke down. And we had to figure out how to get the hay over to another part of the farm. And I took a motorcycle, and I hooked it up to the wagon. And as I drove it across, I realized where I got that from. I said, you know what? I got that from Cambodia. They don't have cars. They have these tut-tuts. And they had to use the tut-tuts to take people around in cabs. And I understood coming back on that flight, global problems cannot be solved by being local thinkers. If you walk into your business and everyone in that business look like you, talk like you, walk like you, eat the same food, listen to the same music, and do the same thing, you are limited. Your partner and group in business and ideas, the missing piece is someone who grew up in Afghanistan, someone who grew up in Pakistan, in Africa, in Ireland, in Portuguese, in France. That's the missing piece. Because it's our cultural understanding and differences that are going to come together and say, this is the piece that we're missing to solve the problem. That is the cross-collaboration that I talk about. If you have a garden where you only have one flower, that's a darn boring garden. Every flower must grow. Every smell must be ignited to accomplish the task that we're accomplishing. And for those of you, I like to always say, who are not from Brooklyn, remember there's 2 types of Americans, those who live in Brooklyn and those who wish they could. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brooklyn Borough President Adams. And I'm hoping this can be a partnership that, maybe we'll start with our community here and with solving some of your problems. Thank you. That's awesome. So, next up, we have someone, Borough President Adams was talking, I'm sorry, hold on. Escort her up here. Anyway, our Brooklyn Borough President was talking about local problems and global problems. Our next speaker is a friend of mine and someone who has actually worked in city government and now is working with Bloomberg at Bloomberg Associates. Todd Asher used to work at the the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment under the Bloomberg administration. And he's actually, since that time, he's worked with cities all over the world in their digital messaging, their digital storytelling, and how innovation and cities really all over the world can use different technologies and different digital storytelling to help them and advance their, whether it's jobs or city problems in a whole multitude of ways. I'm really grateful that he's taken the time here tonight. He's a pretty busy guy all the time. Last year, Catherine Oliver, who works with him, spoke at this same event, our Urban Tech Meetup. And this year, I'm very pleased to have Todd Asher come and join us and tell us about some of the things he's doing all over the world. Thanks so much, Todd.
Thanks, Dawn, and thanks for putting me after the most inspirational speaker of the night. I appreciate that.
Oh, just you wait. We got a lineup of more.
And also for everyone, some of you may have seen me dragging in my my bags here. I'm on my way to Paris tonight. It's one of our client cities that I'll tell you about. And when Dawn asked me to be here, I changed my flight, so I'm missing out on 5 hours of Paris tomorrow. But I'm very happy.
We're worth it. We're worth it.
For sure, indeed. And I want to also give a shout out to an old friend. I see that Borough President Brewer is here. It's really nice to see you. It's been a while. So as Dawn mentioned, I used to work for the city of New York when Mike Bloomberg was mayor. I was part of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. And we launched a number of initiatives in the digital space, including creating the first ever chief digital officer. So Rachel Stern became Hout and was chief digital officer under Mayor Bloomberg, and then was chief digital officer for Governor Cuomo. And so I left city government 4 years ago and became part of Bloomberg Associates. That's our logo. And we are working with other cities around the world. So it's part of the Bloomberg philanthropy. There's no cost to cities to participate. Generally work with a city for about 2 years. We do it in about 8 different portfolio areas. And again, I'm focused on media and technology. And 2 of the client cities that we're working with right now are the cities of Paris and London, which are close in proximity, but rather different, and London especially in light of Brexit. And I chose a couple of photos just for inspiration that are sort of non-traditional of each city. And the idea being, and I'll show them to you, the idea being that when you're living in these cities, the concerns that you have are very different than when you're visiting them. So when we began working with the former mayor of London, Boris Johnson, several years ago, one of the things that we looked at was the fact that the tech sector in London is really thriving, or at least pre-Brexit was thriving and is figuring itself out now. But the city didn't really have a comprehensive effort to how they would deal with education, social issues that could be served by enhanced digital services, working with business, training, all the sorts of things that we looked at in city government in New York. So we talked with then Mayor Johnson about creating a position similar to the one that we had in New York and creating a chief digital officer position. And through those years, we helped to secure budget and scope out the role. And then in the intervening time, Mayor Sadiq Khan became mayor of London. So we've been working now with Mayor Khan for the last year and change since he's been in office. And he has appointed a chief digital officer, and he started about 8 weeks ago. His name is Theo Blackwell. He comes from Camden, which is one of the local councils in London. There's 33 boroughs in London as opposed to the 5 in New York. And he's also worked in the video gaming industry. So he has that meld, much like our chief digital officer, of having private sector and government experience. And he has a very large charge, which is to create a digital strategy for London that looks across all of the different things that are important to this mayor and to the city. London's a bit different from New York in that it's also the capital of the UK, and so working with the equivalent of the federal government in London, the local government being represented by the mayor's office, and then the boroughs, the 33 boroughs across the city, have a lot of power and a lot of financial support for these efforts. So he's really looking to become a bridge that ties all of those levels of government and support and is able to deliver better services to residents. This is Paris, as some of you may be familiar. It has different challenges to it. It has a lot going on as well in the tech sector. The city is comprised differently. The elected officials there's a mayor, and then there's 20 other mayors for each of what they call the arrondissements, so each of the boroughs effectively. And then the deputy mayors that are part of a very large administration are all independently elected. So you have people of different parties who are part of a report structure and part of an organization that is delivering those services. One of the efforts that has taken place outside of city government that city government is part of is called Station F. And so this is being billed as the largest incubator in the world. It'll house 1,000 startups. It just opened. Mayor Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, and President Macron opened it several months ago. And it is a former rail yard, and it is emblematic of what city government is trying to do in Paris right now and expanding beyond the sort of old Paris and into the metropolitan area, but taking disused spaces, which still exist on the periphery of the city, putting them up to competitive ideas and bids about how to invigorate these spaces. And in Paris, there's a lot of people who live in the outer rings of the city for whom it's difficult to get into the center of town, and there haven't traditionally been as many businesses outside of some light manufacturing and the different rail services. So this is a former rail yard that was mainly for commercial rail, and they have converted it into a space that is sort of similar to some that you may have seen, but the scale of it is quite enormous. So you see in the horizon, that break only takes you to about halfway of the space. And you have a lot of traditional companies that are there. The former president of France has set up his nonprofit there. You have a lot of advertising companies that are there, startups, anywhere from one person up to larger teams. And this is seen as really a symbol of the new France and the new Paris. And so there's a lot of, it's got private investment by a French billionaire called Xavier Niel, who runs something called Free, which is one of the cell phone services there and internet services. And there's a big bet on the success and challenging some of the stereotypes of France, which they have in the same way that people think of New York as expensive and difficult and all the other things. France has all of the stereotypes, some which could be true about the number of hours that people can work and other sort of controls, taxes being high and other things. So we're working closely with both of these cities and are very excited about what can take place over the course of the next couple of years as we work with them. But our hearts are always in New York, so it's great to be here. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate your giving up some Paris time for us. So we get a really global perspective from Todd. After having worked in here in the city, he's really taken a lot of his knowledge and working all over the world, like he says, so that's really special and interesting to hear about. Our next speaker, we're going to keep it a little bit more local. Our next speaker is the Senior Vice President for the Center for Urban Innovation with the New York Economic Development Corp. So she works very closely with the NYC EDC, works very closely with Office of the Mayor. Kate Daly focuses on innovation and technology that can really work with our all 5 boroughs in advancing innovation for jobs and sustainability and making life better, again, for people and citizens. And she works with so many different, she'll tell you about it, but she works with so many different agencies within the city to really think about innovation and how we can make things better all the time and in so many different ways. She's super smart and interesting, and I love her and consider her a friend. Please welcome Kate Daly.
Thank you, Dawn, for the introduction, and I'm very thankful to Borough President Adams for hosting us tonight. Very happy to see Borough President Brewer here with us tonight. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the work that we do at EDC. In my division within EDC, our goal is to create jobs for New Yorkers. And the way that we do that is we look at all of the anchor industries in New York and also all of the emerging technologies that have the possibility of disrupting those anchor industries. And we identify what are the market gaps or the market barriers that are holding back our entrepreneurs, our startups, from being able to expand, to scale their companies, and employ more New Yorkers. And so we look at that across multiple industries, which the next slide will show you. And so we work within advanced manufacturing, media, tech, life sciences, healthcare, fashion, smart cities, sustainability and resiliency technologies, fintech, financial services, real estate tech. And so really looking to see where can we make sure that New Yorkers have opportunities and that we can foster the growth of inclusive innovation within New York City. What are the areas where if the private sector is left to its own devices, we're not going to be able to catalyze the growth that we otherwise could by having the government in the form of this city entity come in and use the levers that we have handy. So some of the things that we do, for example, in the food ecosystem, we've launched both incubators and also pre-incubator stage accelerators for local entrepreneurs who might be running their businesses out of their kitchens, and the cost of a commercial kitchen is beyond their reach. And so we launched Brooklyn FoodWorks, which is an incubator with shared commercial kitchen equipment so that entrepreneurs can go into that space, have shared equipment, and scale their companies. Another example of the work that we've done is we're launching a virtual reality lab. And this is because we identified that the startups in virtual and augmented reality in New York City really were part of a very fragmented ecosystem. There wasn't a convener that was regularly bringing them together. They don't have good access to early stage capital, which is a problem that we see, of course, across all different sectors in the ecosystem. We're not yet fully competitive with Silicon Valley in terms of the angel investors ecosystem in New York and early stage investors. And so we want to make sure that we can help these entrepreneurs solve for that as a community and together through co-location within a space that will provide them with fellowships, mentoring, networks, and shared access to shared equipment to sort of defray some of those costs and remove some of those barriers for them to grow and scale their companies. Another example of something that we're doing is we just launched a request for proposals for a very ambitious cybersecurity initiative. And again, this is where our goal is to make New York City a hub for cybersecurity startups and corporations. Our biggest competitors are Israel and Washington, D.C., because the defense industry has really driven a lot of the innovation within the field of cybersecurity. But we see that New York City is one of the most important places for cybersecurity to grow because we have the markets here. Our anchor industries like finance, education, and healthcare have a lot to lose in this war that we have going on in the battlefield of cybersecurity. And so we want to make sure that the startups can grow here and be nurtured here so that they can be connected to those markets of our anchor industries and that New York as a whole can grow as a result. For many of our projects, we partner with CUNY so that we can really support a talent pipeline of CUNY students gaining access to all of the projects that we're supporting across the 5 boroughs. And so I'm going to really encourage you all to come up to me afterwards to ask questions about more specific programs, but really wanted to just emphasize that what the Economic Development Corporation is doing across all of these sectors is sort of asking that but-for question of if the government, if EDC weren't involved, what would happen with the sector? And our conclusion is that there's a real value in catalyzing the growth and also ensuring that the opportunities that come from that growth can be connected to New Yorkers, can be connected to CUNY students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. That's awesome for you to share that with us. Okay, our next speaker is a chief engineering officer at a really, really interesting startup that you all have to know about in New York, Bloc Power. Bloc Power essentially helps buildings retrofit for sustainability. I'm not going to tell you much more about it because I didn't build it and I'm not good at explaining it, but this is the man who actually built it along with his CEO. It epitomizes exactly what we should be doing with technology in working for our cities and for our people. And to tell you the truth, for our planet is an added benefit with Bloc Power. So Tooraj, please come up, and he's going to tell you his last name so that I don't mispronounce it. Thank you so much for coming, Tooraj.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Tooraj. I'm the chief engineer at Bloc Power. I manage a small team of building scientists and data scientists. Bloc Power, we provide technology, software, and data-driven solutions to cities, municipalities, and utilities in order to lower the utility costs and preserve affordable housing of small buildings in underserved and low to moderate income neighborhoods. And so we leverage the power of data and technology to lower the cost of project development, engineering design, and finance of building upgrades. And currently we are deploying our technology to deliver one of New York City's signature programs called Community Retrofit NYC, working with thousands of building owners and community members in central Brooklyn to pretty much make the buildings smarter, cleaner, and healthier. So let me introduce you to one of our good neighbors. His name is Pastor Curry. He runs a local church. Oh, thank you. And after Ben, yeah. He runs a local church, a local school, and a community center in the Bronx. He has spent about almost 40% of his operating budget in order to heat and cool his buildings. The money that he wished to spend to hire more engineers to hire more teachers and run better school programs. And against his own wish, his building is also trapping air pollutions, having negative impacts on the health of his tenants and neighbors. But also he doesn't have the capital and the actual capacity to upgrade his buildings. So he's sort of stuck in what we call the vicious cycle of energy poverty. And this vicious cycle is actually impacting cities, utilities who want lower demand, cleaner air, and economic development. So this market is actually quite large but ignored. 95% of commercial buildings in the US are considered small, less than 50,000 square feet. They're too small for the energy efficiency industry. And this sort of market suffers from poor data quality and quantity, and is highly fragmented. And so everything at small buildings is done at ad hoc level, all the replacements, all the upgrades. So what we do at Bloc Power, our solution is to use data and make these problem transparent and provide data-driven solutions that are cost-effective. And we actually built an AI-enabled cloud application that can optimize the existing assets of these buildings and identify energy efficiency opportunities for investment that could reduce the energy consumption of small buildings by up to 60%. So I'm going to quickly go through the tech side now. So there are 3 layers how we work. The first one is we use pretty much publicly available data as well as some private data for training models to identify energy wasting communities. So we actually are able to remotely identify, based on just available data, that, okay, these are the neighborhoods that we should be targeting, and these neighborhoods and these buildings suffer from high energy cost and also poor indoor air quality. And then layer 2 is really helping us to do remote engineering assessment. Sending engineers, building scientists to buildings can be too costly, especially for small buildings. So what we are able to do, we are able to actually conduct that assessment remotely without going to the building. And then when we engage the customer and the building owners, and they're interested to upgrade the buildings, then we use IoT data. These are time series data, and mostly temperature readings from the thermostats that we often see in buildings. And the time series data, the temperature, allows us to really understand what's going on inside the building, its energy systems, optimize the existing assets, make it more efficient, plus identify investment-grade energy efficiency opportunities for actually institutional investors to invest in and upgrade the buildings. So this is like all together as like one technology stack, and then and pretty much at the end we want to make these ignored buildings in these neighborhoods transparent and bring them the solutions that and help them to be a smarter, greener, and healthier. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tooraj. I mean, really epitomizes using technology for just in awesome ways to help people. That's really great. So pay attention to Bloc Power, folks. Our next speaker is a dear friend of mine. Our next speaker is actually sort of a dear friend of all of Manhattan. Our next speaker is someone who, like me, is a Manhattan gal. She's focused on Manhattan these days, but she has taken time out of her extraordinarily busy schedule to come here to Brooklyn to support us. She has supported this event for 3 years. Our Manhattan Borough President, Gale Brewer, is once again going to just welcome and say hello briefly. Gale you can't get a more tireless worker for your people. Again, like Borough President Adams, might not be a technologist herself, but has supported our New York tech community in so many awesome ways, I can't even enumerate them. Gale, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I never go to Brooklyn, so this is a big deal. I never leave Manhattan. I know there are Brooklyn folks here, but when you're the borough president of Manhattan, this is the second time in this damn room this week. So, and the second thing is that you should know is that we, as 5 borough presidents, get together, and we just had lunch in Queens. That's far, at the Museum of Moving Image, and we had a great time. I can't tell you what we talked about, but we had a great time. I do want to just comment on a couple of fun things, because in London, all I know, there's a great mayor now, but Mayor Johnson, he has blonde hair that sticks up, and he came to New York when Bloomberg was the mayor, and I remember he was sitting at Columbia University, and he's innovative, although he kind of got rid of EU for Britain, that's another story. But he said, I was in the room, he said, New York is a very interesting place, but your seats on your subway are too small for fat-ass New Yorkers. I swear to God, that's what he said. I'm glad he's not mayor anymore. But that is exactly what he said. So anyway, I am really honored to be here. I have a big belief that in civic tech in particular, government needs to use it to be more transparent. And so I was chair of the technology committee in the city council for 8 years, and have always believed that we're about solving problems with technology, and part of it is making government more transparent. And so in that vein, we passed, when I was in the city council, the most far-reaching open data bill. And some of you may know that bill is now 2018, every single agency, and there are 80 of them in the city of New York, have to put all of their data on the open data portal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And the fact of the matter is, jobs are being created. I could spend much more time talking to you about some of the startups that are using this information, but thanks to Noel Hidalgo, who's here, and to this guy, John Paul Farmer from Microsoft, who just got married. I read about you in the New York Times. That was so cool. I don't read the obits. I read who got married. You probably don't read either one, you students, but you need to read them. They're very interesting. The fact of the matter is, this particular legislation is doing something else, thanks to Noel and John Paul and others, which is taking the data that is in open data. Obviously, 311. New York City is the most data-rich city in the United States, and maybe even more so than London and Paris. And so you can take that data. People want to know what is going on in my neighborhood. Like, I'm from Manhattan. I don't give two whatever what goes on in Brooklyn. I do know, I want to know more about Manhattan. I'm being a little facetious. But really, neighbors and New Yorkers want to know about their neighborhood. They want to know how many arrests. They want to know how many young people are graduating. They want to know how many seniors there are. Where's the affordable housing? And they want to be able to layer it. So if you're an academic or if you've got time, you can do this, but the community boards is our focus. There are 12 in Manhattan, and there are 59 of them in the city. How many people have been to a community board meeting? All right, so quite a few, maybe half of you. And the issue there is those 50 citizens work really hard to figure out what's best for their neighborhood. But without that data, they can't do it the best possible way. So that's what we're focused on. We're working with, and you'll hear from Noel, CUNY students. We've been doing it for 3 years just to get them to understand the data and then to transfer that information. We're training in Manhattan community board members on how to use BoardStat. And you'll hear more about that, but it is thanks to those wonderful Microsoft folks that we're able to have built that, and I hope you'll hear more about it. It's a big deal. My dream is to walk into a Manhattan Community Board meeting with the neighbors and the public and the community board members and look up and see whether it's noise is the issue or seniors not having food is the issue or whatever it is, and it's data driven so that the next discussion can be about how we can solve that problem. So that's one of the things we're working on. Second thing we're working on is just we're partnering with IoT, which is Things Network New York, to create a wireless network that is dedicated throughout the entire borough of Manhattan. It is enabling low-power devices to use long-range gateways to connect to open-source, decentralized network to exchange data. So right now, at 1 Center Street near City Hall, and also at our storefront office at 125th Street, we have these devices that can do this. And let me give you one example, and then I'll just summarize. But my biggest challenge, and one of the biggest challenges, is how do you get connectivity at the New York City Housing Authority, where people do not have a lot of money. Thank you, I've got a call. Do not have a lot of money, and where the walls are very thick, so wireless doesn't always work. And we have had this challenge for a very long time. What we want is, and you heard a little bit from the previous speaker, is we want to be able to put devices in a bathroom in NYCHA, and then we can predict if it gets hot or humidity or there is a kind of possibility of mold because there isn't enough money to fix the roof. We would know that in advance and we could plan for it. That's a very simple version of what technology can do to really help people. So that will be an example of one of the ways we're going to use some of these devices. So I just want to close by stating there's a lot of push on municipal Wi-Fi in the 5 boroughs. We're working hopefully with the National Science Foundation, Columbia, Rutgers, NYU, other institutions in Upper Manhattan to try to do a serious Wi-Fi 5G in that community, which desperately needs it, working with Silicon Harlem. It's an exciting project. Again, not every city is going to get it, but we're hoping to participate. And then we're just every single day in our office trying to figure out ways that government and civic technology can be part of everyday life for all New Yorkers. We've got to find a way that whether it's the seniors, the youth, the schools, et cetera, have that opportunity at a price that is affordable and that has the kind of speed that we all deserve. Thank you very much. Dawn is a rock star. Thank you.
No, as far as rock stars go, we've got Gale Brewer in Manhattan, and she deigns to come to Brooklyn every once in a while. Thank you so much, Gale. Again, we can't have anyone working harder for us at the community and the civic level than Gale Brewer, so thank you so much, Gale. So our next speaker, I'm going to slip in kind of quickly. You know, let's see, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, one of the things I did was I started, with my friend Scott Heiferman, I started New York Tech Meetup many years ago. And when I first started New York Tech Meetup, our tech community had a little bit of a relationship with the mayor's office, but not that much. I actually used to ask our mayor, Michael Bloomberg at the time, to come and talk to our New York tech community, and it's sort of, I kind of harassed him for like 5 years until he finally did come and speak. But at one point, he opened up data for the first time. It was really it sounds sort of quaint now, but it was a very big deal to open up city data to the public. And there was no, I remember the folks there said, but Dawn, we can do this, but there's no one whose job it is to pay attention to this, to figure out how to use it, to work with it. Since that time, we've had chief digital officers and we've had chief technology officers in our Office of the Mayor in New York City. Our next speaker is the second New York City Chief Technology Officer for New York City, and he's a wonderful man who's done wonderful work actually in other cities before he came to New York. We're grateful that he is paying attention to how to use technology to make the mayor's office better and more efficient for all our citizens. Thank you so much for saying a few words, Miguel Gamiño.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you for a moment. Especially a special treat following 2 of my 5 favorite borough presidents. Check. No, but jokes aside, I've spent significant time with both BP Adams and BP Brewer, and I'll have to say that New York is a special place to have people in those positions leading the effort, not just from a podium, but on the ground floor level, implementing things like open data. I was, as was hinted at before being here, I was the CIO of the City and County of San Francisco, and we were very proud of our open data efforts, but paled, honestly, not just because I'm here now, but paled in comparison to the strength with which it was implemented in New York, and I think that's a testament to many things that are happening here in New York that make it quite genuinely the epicenter and growing as the epicenter of tech in the world. I want to just make a couple quick comments about how we see technology in the mayor's office and how that might be important to you. First and foremost, we believe it to be a tool to greater inclusion and fairness and equity in this city. And so we are spending a lot of time in my office over the last year forming our strategy around those principles. We talk a lot about how we're using technology as a tool to affect people's lives, but not the reverse. It's not led by technology. It's not led by what is the kind of the newest, shiniest toy in the shop today, and then how do we find a problem for it? We're really starting from a conversation with people, identifying what their priorities are, and then and only then figuring out how technology applies to that. In brief, kind of the way that we see that is, first we have to make sure everybody has access to the playing field, that everybody has the ability to participate in the future we're working to create. And so our version of that, or the way that manifests, is in the form of broadband. BP Brewer mentioned efforts to create connectivity opportunities in public housing, and we want to make sure that every single New Yorker, not 95% of them, not 98% of them, but 100% of us have the ability to get online and engage with the future. And we want to make sure that that's a safe environment, that that's an affordable environment, and that over time it keeps up with the changing needs of the community as technology evolves. So broadband for everyone is number one because it's foundational to everything else we're doing. We want to make sure that technology is brought to bear in a way that increases equity and access. It's not just about creating digital alternatives for those of us who have some conveniences so that some of us have greater conveniences. This is about potentially creating access and opportunity for some people who might not otherwise have the time or the luxury to stand in line at a city building to let us know that they qualify for a city program. So putting it in the pockets of those that need access to government most in a way that's understandable and efficient and accessible to them. And then lastly, making sure we are positioned to keep pace. So we've launched recently a program called NYCX that I'd encourage each of you to check out. And that's all about engaging with the industry so that we are at the table, influencing how new technology is developed, to espouse, to protect these values, to make sure that as the future emerges, that it does so in a way that takes everyone into account, and that we create a more inclusive community or society as technology develops. And so we need to participate in that. That means sometimes the city needs to contribute some things, and sometimes the city needs to ask for some things. But we've created that environment to have that engagement. We are launching some things in the form of challenges, kind of X-Prize style, to, again, challenge the industry to help us solve problems that the community, we started, don't get mad at me, but we initially started in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which, Brownsville is a community that not only could use a strong dose of technology, but only if that technology is aimed at their needs and priorities. And so we had very long-standing, meaningful engagements with them that surfaced the issues that were most important to them. And then we posed those questions to the technology industry in the form of a challenge, challenging them to help us fix things like safety in public corridors at night, and how to make public spaces cleaner and more environmentally friendly. And on the surface, you wouldn't normally think of those things as technology problems, but we've seen a tremendous response from the tech community interested in helping us engage in those things. So all that to say, I think we are in a very important moment and at a very important place where we can lead a very necessary and important conversation that the technology industry has maybe been hoping and waiting for, that we will ask them to help us fix things that really matter, maybe instead of another connected juicer. But fix things that people themselves in the community or people like BP Brewer have identified as the things that really matter to this community, and by extension, to communities all over the world. And so the response we're seeing from the tech industry confirms that theory, that they in fact want meaningful problems to fix. And so it's our job to invite those conversations and make sure we help facilitate that to create a stronger, more inclusive New York. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Really, really awesome to have this, to have a CTO for our city and to have one who is bringing his expertise and then sharing it with us. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Miguel. Our next speaker has actually been working with our city for where is he? Noel, get over here. For a long time, starting with our former administration, and has worked closely with Manhattan Borough President Brewer for a long time. He started something really on his own. I mean, he started it, he ran it singly, almost, by himself for a while, but he's grown this program, BetaNYC, and he runs it with our city, for our city, for I don't know how many years now, but Noel Hidalgo is going to share with you what he's doing on and working with the city and how he uses open technology and open data to help work with our citizens. Thank you so much, Noel.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Did my slides got deleted? No? Oh, okay. Well, they were in there. They were. Anyway, so I really appreciate that Miguel and Gale both came up here and talked about the different opportunities that we had. So 4 years ago, we as a community, so I run this thing called BetaNYC. and it's run as a community. There's about 8 volunteers who show up on a weekly basis to be thinking about how we run our different programs, our events, and our advocacy work. And one of them is in the room today. Emily Goldman is in the back corner. She's also our associate. She's the director of our fellowship program that Gale was talking about. So 4 years ago, we were a bunch of people in a meetup, very similar to this, trying to figure out what's next when it comes down to technology. And we started doing these listening sessions. We went to all 5 boroughs, and we ended up writing this community manifesto called the People's Roadmap. Oh, it's up here, great. And through that process, through that community iterative process, we had partnered with Rachel Hout, and we took all the ideas that they weren't going to put in the mayor's report, and we said, well, we'll write them as the community report. And so the People's Roadmap has 34 different policy ideas or programs, and over the last 4 years, with the great assistance of this council, this mayor, borough presidents, we've been able to turn those 34 ideas, 14 of them were introduced into legislation. Let's see, what is it now? 9 of them actually generated new pieces of legislation that strengthened the city's open data law, released more data. We heard the speaker from 18F talk about how it's great to have government data sets with APIs. Well, we're the organization that helped lead the fight for that type of data. For those of you who are interested in the city's change log, it's called it's the most important newspaper you probably have never heard of. It's the city record. We helped council member Kalos think through what is the process and how do we want that data to exist online in a machine-readable format, so that way you, the people of New York, know exactly what the city's intent to buy, what it's thinking about buying, and what it has awarded as a purchase. It's also the canonical listing of every single municipal hearing meeting that the city has that is open to you, the people of New York, when they want to hear your voice. Now, before that law, it would come out as a PDF for you to read slowly every single business day. So thanks to some amazing council members and administrators, we've been able to get new pieces of legislation that was generated from this document, the People's Roadmap, and we're currently looking to revise the People's Roadmap. So if you go to talk.beta.nyc, you'll be able to see all of the old ideas, which are some of them a little, they need to be dusted off a little bit and hopefully revived for this next 4 years. So you can see all the current ideas, and you can also add your own. We're going on a road show, so we're looking to do events in Bronx and Staten Island, and probably do another one in Brooklyn and in Manhattan coming in the new year. One of these great ideas is the CUNY Service Corps program that we have. How many of you are CUNY Service Corps members yourself, or have been? None? Oh, fascinating opportunity. One? Yeah, CUNY Service Corps, we love you. So how many of you are CUNY freshmen, sophomores, or juniors? Raise your hands. Great. Or soon-to-be CUNY members. CUNY Service Corps is an amazing program that I highly recommend, and you can come talk to Emily or I. Essentially, you get paid to go do good work in the city. So there's like 59 different partners that essentially say, hey, we'll employ you to come into our office and do cool stuff. $12 an hour, 24 hours a week for both semesters. You have to keep a minimum. We employ around 10 of them in the Manhattan Borough President's office. And what we've been able to do is to do some very fascinating things. So first year, we did a gap analysis of community boards. So we essentially went into these little tiny town councils and discovered all the technology that they could have and kind of the opportunities that exist. And then in the following year, we built some prototypes, which John talked about at the very beginning. One of them is BoardStat. So if you email me, we'll send you some links, or if you Google around and look for BoardStat. So we're now in our 4th year, and we're going to be going into our 5th year, and we want to continue to work with CUNY undergraduates. We love CUNY undergraduates. We think you're amazing people, and we just want to keep on working with it. So keep your grades up. Apply for the CUNY Service Corps. Shoot myself an email, or come find Emily or I, and we'd love to chat and work with you next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Noel, and CUNY students. You have to take him up on that. I'm going to try to speed things up here. I know you want to get some more drinks and snacks. Our next speaker is actually the digital marketing director at CUNY. This is an awesome new job, and she's super wonderful. But one of the things she did before she got to CUNY was actually work as a project coordinator and special assistant to the commissioner for the New York City's Mayor Office of Immigrant Affairs. And she also actually worked for the Hillary for America too. She understands how digital technology and messaging can impact communities and impact people and help move things along. And I'm super happy to have her share some of her insights with us today. Maria Cruz Lee, thank you so much for coming today.
So, does this work to push it forward? This? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Cruz Lee. I'm a graduate of Hunter College with a media degree, and I ended up in GovTech, focused on digital engagement and advocacy in the private sector, or public sector, not private sector. I describe myself as a digital organizer, someone who uses digital tools like the internet, social media, and apps to build communities and support around specific topics. Currently, my specific topic is CUNY. I've been the director of digital marketing for the past 3 months, so fairly new. Half my work happens online, and the other half relies on building relationships in person. So thank you both for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to speaking with folks later. Let's see. So my perspective on government tech is from the angle of advocacy and empowerment. For me, it's about how we connect, support, and celebrate our community. Essentially, how can our end user make the most of the information we're putting out there? My challenge is always, can they find what they need within 1 to 2 clicks? And when they find that information, can they act on it? Listed here are some places I've worked, and the next few slides, I'll quickly touch on how they relate to government and tech. So I know that's small, so sorry. At the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, our audience was immigrant New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status. We focused on language access and community building. In the 4 years that we were there, we built the digital presence to a point where individuals were comfortable tweeting at us, and cities all over the world were asking us for help. So here are some of the initiatives our team worked on. It's a bit small, but Immigrant Heritage Week 2010 became viral when the Colbert Report picked our graphic up for the word. From 2012 to 2013, we partnered with CUNY Citizenship Now to actually help green card holders get their citizenship status. We supported emergency response during Hurricane Sandy and released a set of blueprints that were used internationally on immigrant integration. At Define American, this was a nonprofit focused on how immigrants are talked about in media, culture, and college campuses. We advocated for immigration reform on a national level and hosted a digital story bank that we used when talking to legislators. You're looking at what we did in 2014 at the height of the child migrant crisis at the southern border. As you may know, immigration is still at the forefront, and we continue to fight for a Clean Dream Act, and it has to happen this month. Hillary for America. I was part of the digital team at headquarters. I focused on millennials and students, among many other coalitions. I ran the Text Out the Vote Center in Manhattan. We called it Club GOTV. We supported more than 200 volunteers a day with a peak of 2,700 shifts leading up to Election Day last year. We texted over 2.3 million voters in 12 battleground states, but unfortunately it was not enough. So, I only had a few minutes, but I encourage you to connect with me. Here are the ways that you can, especially if you're interested in digital organizing or digital advocacy in government. Thanks again for the invite, and I look forward to being at more of these CUNY Tech meetups.
Thanks so much, Maria. I feel like we're so lucky at CUNY to have someone like Maria helping us out with messaging and getting that coordinated at CUNY. Our next speaker really is kind of the reason we are here this evening, because he used to work at the New York Economic Development Corps, but when I went to him and I said, you know, we're going to have this CUNY Tech meetup again that John's going to sponsor, it's going to focus on, you know, civic, urban innovation and technology. He said, you know what, let's have it focus really on GovTech specifically, and let's go to a city venue, something really awesome and wonderful like Brooklyn Borough Hall. So our next speaker is really a wonderful and super sharp, smart guy and a friend of mine, and I'll let him tell you about some of the amazing initiatives he's working on. Matt Weinberg, thanks so much for coming and helping me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dawn, for having me. That was a very nice, warm intro. I hope it's recorded so I can watch it when I'm feeling sad. I'll raise this a little bit. Okay. So we're about halfway through, a little further. You guys are doing great. I know there's a lot of speakers and a lot to take in. So I will do my best to give back a time credit. We'll see if that happens. But briefly, as Dawn mentioned, I used to work for the New York City Economic Development Corporation with Kate Daly, who you heard from before. I ran a lot of the city's big tech programs coming from EDC. One was NYC Big Apps, probably the most notable. Who here has heard of that? Sweet. It's good. So yeah, that program really helped inspire some of the open data initiatives that occurred in 2010 and 2009, helped by folks like Don and Noel Hidalgo and John Paul for sure with the support from Microsoft. So that's a big civic innovation competition. I encourage folks to keep tabs on it to see when that comes out next. It awards prizes to entrepreneurs helping to solve big civic challenges. After the EDC, I went to the Obama administration. I was an appointee, which is just a fancy way of saying that I had to resign on the day that Donald Trump took office. I used to tell a which is now a sad, sick joke, but when I was out to the community talking about my role, I would say, you know, I'm a political appointee. It's just a fancy way of saying that I have to leave when the next administration, the next president comes in, no matter who she may be, and I used to knock on wood. There was one day I did not knock on wood when I said that, so I blame myself every day for what happened. Sorry, Maria. Anyway, levity aside, I had a pretty cool role in the administration. I was the senior advisor to the nation's chief investment and innovation officer. So we directed $6 billion of capital, billion with a B, of your tax dollars and mine, to startups working on cutting-edge, future-focused technologies, incubators and accelerators, really supporting inclusive entrepreneurial growth. So think about entrepreneurs in Oklahoma City and Omaha, Nebraska, not Silicon Valley. And finally, we gave money to investment funds, private equity mostly, and venture capital funds that invested in small businesses. So I've seen a lot of economic development programs. I've traveled the country pretty widely, seeing how entrepreneurial ecosystems form and grow. And before I dive into one of my favorite programs, I just want to say, I think starting a business in New York City is the best place to start a business. You see here that there's a very sophisticated support structure amongst the city, folks like John Paul at Microsoft, across a lot of different avenues. There's a lot of support here for small business and especially startup growth. So if anyone at CUNY is thinking about starting a business, stay in New York because it's the best. So I'll talk about one program. It's called the Small Business Innovation Research Program. Has anybody heard of that before? Nice, that's actually surprising. The name does not do it justice, and we tried to change the name, but it was actually easier to get $2 million for a different program than it was to actually change the name of this program. But anyway, it's the Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR is the acronym. It's basically the federal government's seed and venture capital fund. So this fund allocates $2.5 billion to startups and small businesses working on cutting edge technology. So you see, that's kind of small, but you see robotics, AI, there's a few blockchain companies that have been funded recently, augmented reality, virtual reality, you name it, the government will fund it. And you think about some of the more specific types of funding, think about military funding, energy, health and human services, a lot of medical technology. But my favorite is the National Science Foundation. If you guys were gonna write down one thing tonight, it would be the NSF SBIR program. So they really generally act the most like a VC, where they will fund any technology that fits in a broad portfolio. So I think it's a very untapped resource. It's very encouraging for entrepreneurs, for folks that come from different backgrounds. because traditionally it's accessed by academic sources and people that really know how to game the system. So a big part of my job was going around the country and informing people like you that this was an option and an opportunity for them. Yeah, that's just more about the numbers, but it's a very successful program that has led to numerous success stories, a lot of patents, a lot of IPOs, a lot of return on investment. So some people say that government wastes money, and that is true sometimes for sure. But other times there's a considerable societal and even monetary return on government dollars. So with that, I think I'm about done. Hopefully give a minute back to all of our other illustrious speakers. And if anyone wants to know more about these grants or other government programs, find me after. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's awesome. Okay, our next speaker I've known for a while. I've known for many years, and I have never gotten his exact title correctly said. I'll just say that he's a super smart, interesting guy. Not CUNY, but he works at the intersection of law and the internet, and he's been doing this really for a long time, so he's thought deeply about it. He works at Brooklyn Law, and he is the founder and director of the Brooklyn Law Incubator and Policy Clinic, and is also the faculty chair and innovation catalyst for the Center for Urban Business Entrepreneurship. Please welcome my good friend, Jonathan Askin.
Thanks, Dawn. I gotta say, there is a ton of optimism in this room. But I think it's probably appropriate to leave it to the lawyer to add a little bit of sobriety and take your pulse. So this question's for the students in the room. How many of you actually feel all that optimism? Or raise your hand. How many of you students feel like you're going into a world where the future is bright, there are no big problems, and you're going to get a wonderful job, get a lot of money, do amazing things in this world? Who thinks that? How many of you think are pissed as hell at the generation that came before you with the world we've bequeathed you? And you're coming into a world uncertain about your livelihood, uncertain about your economic viability, uncertain about your environment, uncertain about the state of the planet. All right, well, that's something we've got to think about. Now, having said that, I hope I've deflated you a little bit. I want to inflate you now. I envy you. I envy the prospect of coming into the world, into a career, to fight these essential battles. I didn't have these battles when I came out of school. Now, I'm an attorney. How many of you think of attorneys as revolutionary forces? Oh, we see one hand. All right, there is a hand. There's a couple of hands. All right. I want to, Wee Willie Keeler, I think, who used to play for the precursor of the Brooklyn Dodgers, says, hit it where they ain't. How many of you think about going to law school? Not many. How many of you think about law as a profession that's capable of changing the world? Oh, more of you. Okay. Oh, that's actually optimistic. Okay. Here's the thing most people don't get. I think most people think of lawyers as the preservers of the status quo. I think at this point in human history, that should not be further from the truth. Think about every single great revolutionary moment in human history. It's been the lawyers who have had to put society back together after the revolution. You can look just at American history, 250 years of American history. There have been 4 or 5 great moments in American history when it's the lawyers, the young lawyers, who have been forced to think hard, use their legal reasoning skills, and recreate society. You could think about right after the American Revolution. Who were the revolutionaries? It was the attorneys. It was those who wrote the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the laws, the first laws to create this new experiment in pluralism and democracy. After the Civil War, it was the lawyers who had to implement the new amendments to the Constitution and reconstruct our society. In the 1930s, the Great Depression, the New Deal, it was young lawyers who came to Washington to reorder society for a more equitable future. 1963, 1964, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. It was young lawyers who came to Washington to reimagine America. And now we're going through the digital revolution. And we've got all of these global crises confronting us. And I want you to all think there's, without a doubt, real value in hacking and technology and coding and those noble pursuits there and using them for social justice, civic participation, public good. But there is also a role for lawyers, particularly lawyers who understand the nature of innovation, the nature of technology, to be there and play a role with the hackers and understand the hacker spirit and understand the technology and the trajectory of innovation and interface between technologists, between innovators, and between government to recreate the world. We are living through an inflection point like we've never seen before. And I'm hopeful that some of you, those of you who take a legal path, those of you who take a technology path, will work together and use those combined paths to reorder society. We started something here at Brooklyn Law School across the street about 6 years ago. We started something called the Legal Hackers Movement. It grew out of this terrible condition that my students and I were confronting. We went to every single hackathon we could find. And we were in awe of all of you coders in the room doing amazing things to transform society. Government or a charity or an organization would give you a task to do, and 48 hours later, you would produce remarkable things. And then me and my students, the lawyers, sitting around like wallflowers at the revolution, would throw a wet blanket on the flame of your innovation and say, well, you screwed up. You didn't divide up your equity. You didn't figure out how to protect your IP. You have no corporate structure. What you're doing violates X, Y, and Z law. Forget about it. And I thought that was a horrible thing for young lawyers to be doing in the new revolution. So we decided we're going to create the Legal Hackers Movement. And the Legal Hackers Movement was an effort to make lawyers essentially project managers in the revolution. Bring technologists to us. Frame the issues as lawyers and policymakers can frame the issues, and then harness technologists to work with us hand in hand to improve society. Now, you're living in a phenomenal moment. When we first started doing a lot of this 10 years ago, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, and government's default answer was no. This has never been tried before, let's not do it. Now, through the efforts of folks like Gale Brewer, certainly Noel Hidalgo, 10 years fighting for BetaNYC, a lot of folks who spoke before me in this room, amazing things are happening, and government is finally taking notice. We've got council members like Ben Kalis who really gets how technology can transform society. So now the moment is ripe, and it's ripe for government to see what technology can do to improve social circumstances, but it's also ripe for lawyers to play a role, particularly young lawyers who understand technology. So whatever path you all take, be it in technology, be it in law, be it in the humanities, be it in the arts, learn how to work from one another. Now, what's great about this room? What's great about Brooklyn? What's great about Manhattan? Has anyone ever heard of the concept of the adjacent possible? A couple hands. All right. The adjacent possible was actually, well, I don't know if it was coined by him, but there was a guy down the hill who's a social philosopher. He started a company called Outside In, Stephen Johnson. He had a good television series for a while. Yes, he was very high on the concept of the adjacent possible. And he was in part high on it because it was happening here. There's a reason why great things happen in urban environments, and they don't happen in the hinterlands quite as often. Look around this room. What you've got is people from all walks of life exploring very different things. To me, the adjacent possible means you don't know what amazing things are going to happen, but when you cram all the right people from disparate cultures and backgrounds and experiences together in the same city, amazing things will happen. We won't know what it is, but give them the tools to do it, and this city is giving us the tools to do it. So.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That's awesome. All right, just a couple more speakers. Our next speaker is a wonderful, wonderful dear friend and woman. She actually used to run the Mozilla Foundation. Now she's gone over to Wikimedia, which is part of what runs Wikipedia, and she is the endowment director for the Wikimedia Foundation, and she'll tell you what they do. But one of the things that's really important to Wikipedia and Wikimedia is that knowledge gets shared by everyone and is actually contributed to, that knowledge base is contributed to by everyone. That whole idea of open internet couldn't be more typified in the work that Kaitlin does and the whole Wikipedia and Wikimedia enterprise. So thank you so much, Kay, for coming and sharing what you do with us today. Kaitlin, Thaney.
Hi, everybody. So to give you a bit of an understanding as to what, lofty title, all those sorts of things mean, I get paid to think full-time about keeping Wikipedia available for future generations. And so I think about sustainability a lot. Came up through the open source community, working at organizations like Creative Commons and Mozilla, helping to do community-driven work and also build community-driven programs. But moving to Wikimedia, which is the foundation that supports Wikipedia, we've really started to grapple with a number of things that I think of in parallel to some of the challenges that those that build GovTech solutions and civic tech solutions face on a regular basis. By show of hands, does anyone here not know what Wikipedia is? Don't be afraid. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I won't judge. But I mean, Wikipedia is, in many cases, one of the largest, if not the largest, online participatory projects writ large. We're about 17 years old, and about 2 years ago, about a year before I joined Wikimedia, we started thinking on our 15th birthday about how this kind of funky project that we never really thought was going to work, how that is kind of grappling with the next 15 years to come. We're kind of an anomaly and also a grown-up in the internet space. A lot of projects have come and gone in the past, 15 to 17 years. We, continue to thrive, not only in terms of ambition, but also in terms of just sheer longevity, scope, and scale. And, now in my role, thinking of what that next 15, 20, 25 years looks like, and how we can make sure that Wikipedia and other resources like that are available for others to be able to learn from and innovate and participate in for next generations, a couple of challenges came to mind. So, we like to think of, okay, it's this big crowdsourced collaborative project. We've expanded to hundreds of languages around the world, engaged literally millions of people in terms of contributions, and a really diverse set. Wikipedia is not just about science. It's not just about government. It really covers the gamut, and also is there to be continually edited. So just quickly by the numbers, because I think this is fun, and also you guys have been sitting for a long time. We have on average about 1.4 billion unique devices that access Wikipedia per month. Now I say devices because we have a privacy policy that we don't track users, and those devices and those visits fluctuate as the school year moves forward, so we see that students are relying on, Wikipedia. It kind of goes up the day after Christmas when people get new devices and they start Googling stuff again. But also, we're the 5th most visited site on the web, top 10 in terms of non-commercial sites, which is kind of incredible. 300 plus Wikipedias exist, each in their own languages, and that's not just one English Wikipedia translated into 300 languages. That is content written by people in that language from those cultures and really differing in that sort of way. And we've heard a lot about, these projects not necessarily being about technology, but being about the people and also being for the people. We really think of that as a real emblematic thing there too. 400 million plus articles. Again, these vary between various language versions, but also 350 edits a minute with over 250,000 people per month, and about 70 to 80,000 of those people making more than 5 edits per month. So, that continues to move forward. Though, there also are some kind of interesting things about how people engage and what that can do to help bring discourse, which we really pride ourselves on, how we can use to bring that forward. There's a recent Harvard study that actually said that the more, if you come in with a partisan viewpoint to edit Wikipedia, the more that you engage with the site, the more neutral your language will become, which might make it the only online platform that makes you more reasonable the more that you're on it, which to me is kind of incredible. But, there's also a lot more that we support and the community supports in terms of image collections, data, et cetera. Now, why, in terms of sustainability, what sort of things are we thinking about? We recently engaged in a broader exercise with our community members. Thousands of community members in 20 languages at the same time, simultaneously, to, again, think about what the future of this could look like, and also what the future for information could look like, right? 15 years in the future, we've already seen the independent media in New York go away in the last how many years? 2 to 3? What does that look like for media in terms of the next 15 years? Will we have the same sort of information consumption that we've had otherwise? And so really thinking through not only consumption and how we get information, but also how we participate in information, the consolidation of information. Populations in places that we've got a lot of representation and activity for Wikipedia are looking to, I mean, we can count babies. We can't necessarily count users, we can count babies in terms of population counts. That looks like it will decline. What does that mean for keeping this resource available for generations to come? As I said, we are one of the top 10 most visited sites on the web. Of those top 10 sites, 2 of them are owned by one company. Of the top 10 apps on the web, if you want to think of it for the open web, top 10 apps, mostly owned by 3 companies. That to me kind of brings me back to the web that I first engaged with, where it was really a lot of walled gardens. And so thinking if you're going to go through and get engaged in GovTech and thinking through some of these implications, how can we start to make sure that we're designing for the people that we're serving and also doing so in a decentralized, flexible, and adaptive way? Participation to us, we could have a Wikipedia that exists in terms of an encyclopedia collection, and I have one of these at my house, in my parents' house, that just collects dust. But, it is key to us to stay up to date, relevant, current, credible, accurate for people to participate. And so we must be adaptive and design within those needs. And so really challenging, do the conceptual models that we exist in now, do those matter for people that we want to reach? And as we've heard many people talk about tonight, people have to have access to the future that we want to create, to quote, the CTO Gamiño. And so thinking through some of these shifts, whether it's from how people get information through search, moving to chat, institutions, civic institutions, to things that are moving online, thinking of maybe Wikipedia in future days as a public institution, maybe for the self-taught, and how do we enable new forms of knowledge, oral histories, new things that we can't necessarily predict just yet, knowledge equity, continue to break down those barriers. Those are all questions that we're focusing on now, not just to be able to preserve knowledge, but also to be able to be a leader and partner in opening information with you all and also with those worldwide. And I encourage you to join us.
Okay, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Kay. That's really fantastic. Our next speaker is a wonderful gentleman who actually used to work with the Obama administration. He is not a Brooklyn boy. He's not a Manhattan boy, but he's a Bronx boy. So he started a very interesting organization that he'll tell us about in the Bronx. Elias Alcantara, thank you so much for joining us.
Upset that BP Adams and Brewer aren't here, so I could remind them that the best borough is the Bronx. So glad to be here. So thanks to Don and the CUNY Tech Meetup team. My other connection to the city is I'm a proud CUNY grad. I graduated from Lehman College, and I'm loving these ads that are all over the subway proclaiming CUNY as the best urban institution, higher ed institution in the world. I believe that, and I think we got it going on over here. So earlier, Don mentioned that the tech meetups, the CUNY Tech meetups, and particularly today's meetup, takes a specific approach at how we could be helpful and useful to people and the people in our communities. With that reason, I'm actually going to focus on a very specific issue that's very near and dear to me, and that, quite frankly, many call the civil rights issue of our time. I like to paint a picture of an institution that often is invisible in our communities and is often forgotten. Today in our country, we have about over 2.2 million people incarcerated in our country. We are 5% of the world's population, but make up 25% of the world's incarcerated population. Of those 2.2 million people, 90% of those sit in state and local prisons and jails. Every year, more than 11 million people cycle through 3,100 local jails across the country, many of which are in there for low-level, nonviolent drug offenses, and many who can't afford to pay post-bail, and sometimes could range anywhere between $500 and $1,000. Local governments spend about $22 billion a year in that system. In local jails, 64% of people suffer from mental illness, 68% have a substance abuse disorder, and 44% suffer from chronic health issues. One of our biggest jails in our country also doubles up as the biggest mental health institution in our country, and that's in Los Angeles, and that's the Los Angeles County Jail. We spend overall $80 billion a year on our system, in our criminal justice system. And just to give you a sense of what we've been spending on versus other things we haven't, spending on prisons and jails has increased at a triple the rate of spending on pre-K to 12 education in the last 30 years. And what makes matters worse is that the system disproportionately impacts communities of color and women. Though African Americans and Hispanic make up approximately 32% of the US population, they make up 56% of the incarcerated population. Between 1980 and 2014, the number of women in prison grew by an alarming 700%, increasing at a rate 50% higher than men. And just to give you a even more specific sense, 60% of those women in prison or jail are mothers. Over the last 5 years, I had a chance to serve in the White House with President Barack Obama and a team of amazing colleagues, some of which I'm joined here by today. I feel like it's a mini reunion here this evening. And I got to work on this issue. And there I had a chance to frame it up just to bring this closer to home for you all as you think about how to fix this system. And the way the president framed the issue, which I still frame it today, is in 3 buckets. How do we reform such a broken and massive system, right? You got to take an approach of reforming the community, the cell block, and the courtroom. We can no longer envision mass incarceration in the silos that the policing issue on this side or the prison issue on that side. In the community, we have to do everything we can to prevent folks from ever interacting with the justice system, like exposing them to jobs, like the tech pipeline here in New York City, for example. Just to give you a sense, did you all know that there's a high correlation between literacy rates at the 3rd grade level for young men of color and the likelihood of them ending up incarcerated in their late teenage years and early 20s? You can know that early in life. So how do we invest in education to help build that literacy rates at 3rd grade level? In the courtroom, we have to make fairer laws. As I mentioned earlier, there are people sitting in jail for non-violent drug offenses sometimes for months, for years, and in some cases even over a decade, as we see here in Rikers Island, here in our very city. And lastly, the cell block. How do we improve recidivism rates? On average, 60 to 70% of people who end up incarcerated end up back incarcerated. So how do we actually change that? I just painted an incredibly grim picture. And to piggyback on Jonathan, who helped paint a grim picture earlier today, I do want to say that there has been progress. On a very personal level, the firm that I run today, Bronx Element Strategies, also known as BEST, focuses on advising a number of private, philanthropic, and public organizations trying to do more and be part of fixing the system. I work with the likes of the National Basketball Association, to institutions like Columbia University, to think tank across the country to help them think about how to actually play a role in fixing the system. Now, what can you do to help? In closing, there are 3 ways that I think you all could plug in. 1, start by having the conversation among your own network. And simply put, yes, just talk about it. Today in our country, we have to start humanizing the story of those who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated. 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record in this country. 70 million folks in this country have a criminal record. We have to start talking about that reality. 2, to bring it home to a GovTech solution. Get involved in initiatives that are going on in your city and in your counties. For example, there's an initiative called Data-Driven Justice, which we started at the White House, which actually still continues with the support of the Arnold Foundation. And that initiative looks specifically at uncovering data that before we hadn't seen. For example, in Miami-Dade County, which is made up of 2.7 million people, found that 97 people a year in their county accounted for $13 million in spending and over 39,000 visits in jails and emergency rooms in 1 year. So when they uncovered that data, they found solutions to try to alleviate that, and it actually made changes to divert folks to the services that they need. And lastly, for the students in the room, think about your career track and innovative ways to help repair this broken system. For those of you who are already in your career, think about ways that your institution, your organization could add to solving this problem. I mean, think about it. Can we exist as a carceral state and country while also promoting a healthy democracy? Can we have, for example, 3 million people in the state of Florida who are eligible to vote not be able to vote after they've served their time and earned their second chance and cannot vote today? These are the values that make our country great, but these are also the values that we're ignoring by not fixing the system. It can't continue to happen. So please continue to stay informed, and I urge you to play a role in fixing the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thanks so much, dear. Okay, we've only got, after our next speaker, we've got 2 more speakers in quick succession. I know this is a lot, but I feel like these people who I have had the privilege of knowing and seeing their work up close and personal, I really want to share them with you, because I think that there's things that they do that can inspire you in making your choices about moving forward and how to use technology, or if to get involved in technology, that they're very open people. When they say, come and find me, or if you're interested in this, they actually mean it. I encourage you all. I don't know if Charlie O'Donnell is still in the room. Maybe he's not, but anyway, you know, he's someone also in our Brooklyn community who helps entrepreneurs and has been in the tech community for a while. Anyway, thank you, Elias. Our next speaker is a wonderful woman. Speaking of prisons, she's actually a lawyer, and in another life, she worked on a very important case for an African-American man, musician, and helped him get out of jail. It's a whole other story, but it's actually amazing work that she's done. But right now, she's running our Smart Cities Conference here in New York. She and her team started a Smart Cities Conference, a conference devoted to how are we using technology to help cities actually around the world, and what are those conversations look like, and let's gather the right people in the room to talk about some of these solutions. And actually, John and Microsoft was one of the sponsors of that. She led that conference last year. It was amazing. She'll tell you about it, and she's doing it again this year. She'll give you the numbers. Aarti, Tandon, thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
So I feel so privileged to be in this room with so many friends and advisors and mentors. And so yes, I run the Smart Cities Conference, and where better to have had it last year than Brooklyn. So we had it at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Our goal is to help people understand what their futures are going to look like, not in a conference room, we're talking about IoT, but let's take these conversations to places like the Brooklyn Navy Yard. They're beacons of hope and revitalization and jobs of the future. Last year, we had 2,100 attendees from 30 countries, 175 speakers. We had the support of Microsoft. Thank you so much. And we had 25 workshops from MIT to C40 and NUMA. We did tours of NYPD command centers so people can see how data is being used in real time. We focused on affordable housing. We focused on urban farming. And so this year we're hosting the event at Pier 36, May 8th to the 10th, and it's in downtown Manhattan, another place of resiliency after Sandy. And this year we have some really exciting speakers. We have Mark Cuban, we've got Dan Doctoroff, we've got Jeffrey Sachs, all talking about how are we going to use technology to build inclusive economies. And how are we going to help people solve the urban challenges that cities are facing right now? We take a holistic view at cities. We think that you can't just talk about technology. At the end of the day, every company is a technology company now. If you're a car company, a fashion company, you're a tech company. But really, how are we going to bring ecosystems together to help solve these challenges? And we invite you, all of you folks at CUNY, to volunteer, participate, attend. As Dawn said, I'm very open and willing to meet with anyone. And I hope that you'll attend. And there's more information on our website, which is smartcitiesny.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear. So look out for that, Smart Cities New York, coming up in May. All right, 2 more speakers. Our next speaker, a wonderful woman, Anita Kishore, is actually working with my friend Rich at Upper West Strategies, but what she and Rich are doing is they're running a very interesting internship program with the Life Sciences department at NYC at Kate Daly's New York Economic Development Corps, and they'll tell you a little bit about it really, really quickly. Then there's only one other speaker, and then we can go out and have a couple of beverages before we go. Anita Kishore.
Hi, good evening. My name is Anita Kishore, and I have a question for you. How many of you are interested in healthcare? Great. How many of you are interested in health? How many of you are wondering what the heck is the difference? Oh, okay, interesting, great. Well, let's go to the first slide. There are going to be 3 things I want to tell you about tonight. Number 1, health is a whole lot more than healthcare. Number 2, health and healthcare are way more than the Affordable Care Act. And number 3, we need innovation in the workforce. And I'm going to ask all the students in the room and any companies who might be interested in hosting students. I'll wrap up with that and I'll tell you a lot more about our internship program at the end. So what is health? The way I see health, health is a heck of a lot more than just health care. And if we go around this little diagram, at the top, what I'm trying to represent there is healthcare delivery, which you're probably fairly familiar with. Hospitals, physicians, nurses, caregivers. You may have even heard of innovations like electronic health records. Maybe you've heard of evidence-based healthcare. You might be surprised to realize a lot of healthcare is not evidence-based, or outcome-based payments instead of fee-for-service. So what you're going to hear going forward is a lot about cost, quality, and outcomes in the delivery of healthcare. But if we keep going around the circle counterclockwise, healthcare is so much more than just the delivery of healthcare or hospitals or cost and quality. It also includes things like preventive health, basic stuff, diet, exercise, glucose monitoring. A cool innovation in preventive health is glucose sensors that are embedded in contact lenses, so no more pricking of your fingers. Keeping going around the circle, pharmaceuticals and medicines. There's a lot of innovation that's happening in pharmaceuticals. You've probably heard of, this is probably what gets most attention, in part because it's a huge driver of the US and global economy. But beyond just basic pills and cough syrups, there's a ton of innovation that's happening in pharmaceuticals. Smart pills, pills that you swallow that tell your doctor if you actually complied with the medicine. Nanomedicine, robotics, 3D printing. But increasingly, you're going to hear a lot, you probably already have heard a lot about the rising cost of prescription medicines, and you might hear going forward things about inequality in clinical trials. So keeping going around the circle, at the bottom, bioinformatics. You may have heard of this. 2 trends, personalized medicine, cancer diagnostics. Personalized medicine means the right medicine or the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. Very interesting, cool technologies being developed not only in personalized medicine, but across bioinformatics. The use, of course, of data to help deliver improved medicines and improved analytics. But a big question that keeps coming up is, will these innovations be only for the wealthy, or will they be for everyone? Global health. Global health, some cool innovations happening there. Global health is a lot more than just Ebola or trying to treat Ebola. The United States government actually plays a huge role in investing in treatment, R&D, not just treatment, but research and development, as well as improvement of care and outcomes toward infectious diseases throughout the world. Other super cool inventions within global health: vaccine-delivered drones delivering vaccines, text applications, SMS and text-based applications to track the delivery and use of malaria or anti-malarial medications. But increasingly, what you're seeing in global health, the rise of twin challenges of obesity at the same time as you have malnutrition that many countries, low and middle income countries, are trying to combat. And finally, digital health. So digital health, probably very exciting for any of you in tech. It's more than just wearable devices. Anybody wearing a Fitbit or such? Couple folks, great. Big question, what are we gonna do with all of that data that's being generated by these wearable devices? It's a huge industry, health and healthcare. Globally, somewhere around $9 trillion, but honestly, at that point, it's really hard to be precise about the size of this industry. In the US, maybe somewhere about $3 trillion. There's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to do. If we can go to the next slide. So I hope I've convinced you that health is a lot more than healthcare. A lot of people, when they think about government's role in healthcare, think that it's just the Affordable Care Act, right? It's just Obamacare. Actually, you may be surprised to know that the government is involved in more than 4 different kinds of government-sponsored healthcare. All of these, you've all heard of these before, but you may not think about it. And every kind of government-sponsored healthcare actually has a predecessor or comes from healthcare or health insurance system from outside of the United States. So just to name a few, CMS, sorry for the bad graphics here, but CMS is Medicare and Medicaid, which is single-payer healthcare, government-sponsored healthcare, but that actually comes from Canada, has its roots in the Canadian health insurance system. The VA system, Veterans Administration, the healthcare system there, physicians are employed by the government, but that model actually comes from Britain and Cuba. 2 other healthcare systems or health insurance systems sponsored by the government, CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program, covering over 9 million kids. Sadly, the funding ran out September 30th, and started by Hillary Clinton when she was the senator from the state of New York. Marie and Matt, if you're there, I'm wearing my Madam President nail polish. Sadly, CHIP is in real danger of, it's already expired, but hopefully that will turn around. TBD. Another government-sponsored health insurance is the Indian Health Services. This covers Native American and Native Alaskan care. In addition to these government-sponsored health insurance systems, there are actually 2 other ways that we get health insurance in this country. One, private employer-sponsored health insurance that a lot of us have, and I'm particularly very grateful for. But that model also doesn't come from here. It actually comes from the Bismarck model in Germany. And the key difference between the German health system and the United States healthcare system, or at least with private employer-sponsored health insurance, is that in Germany, insurers are all not-for-profit. A little bit different here. And finally, the last healthcare insurance model, but it's really not insurance at all, it's out-of-pocket care, which is actually what, prior to the Affordable Care Act, over 16% of the country had to deal with. And that's what we have, that's what is available as a health insurance system in poor and developing countries. So there's a lot more, though, that the government plays in healthcare than just health and healthcare than just insurance. There is also something called the FDA drug approval process, the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA keeps your food supply chain safe, and it helps to approve drugs to make sure that they are safe and effective for our consumption. And there are many other examples of government's role in healthcare that were alluded to, I believe, by Matt when he talked about the SBIR grant. There's also the role that the NIH, National Institutes of Health, plays in sponsoring basic science research, and the NYCEDC. Thanks, Kate Daly, for mentioning that earlier, for bringing up life sciences as well, because what I want to talk to you about is the way that the NYCEDC is sponsoring life sciences and offering internships for New York City residents. So I said to you 3 things at the beginning. 1, health is more than healthcare. 2, health and healthcare are more, and government role in that is more than Obamacare. And 3, we need a lot of innovation, particularly in the workforce. So if we go to the last slide, I want to share with you a little bit about our program, the LifeSci NYC internship program. We are sponsoring internships for summer of 2018. We want you to apply. 100 internships to be placed in life sciences companies and organizations around the city. We encourage undergraduates and graduate students to apply. The deadline is December 31st. If you are a company or organization and you're interested in hosting students, let me know. We need innovation in tech, we need innovation in process, and we absolutely need innovation in the workforce. So please come see me or my colleague Rich, who's featured in the middle picture over there, afterward. Thanks.
Okay, last speaker. I'm sorry this is so long. You know, I really feel like we just have to, I want to share these folks with you just to sort of give you all the possibilities. Our last speaker is a wonderful gentleman. It's really appropriate that he is our last speaker because he has worked and focused on diversity and inclusion for a long time. He's actually now working at City College and has started a whole program that he's going to tell you about that in using technology to achieve this better in our schools and at CUNY and actually in our technology community in general. Please welcome Paolo Guadiano. Thank you so much, Paolo.
4 minutes away from drinks or whatever it is that we're having. So first of all, thank you very much, Don, for inviting me to be here. I'm going to talk to you about something that I'm doing that uses a particular kind of technology to help quantify the value of diversity and inclusion. And I'm going to start by asking you a question. Suppose I wanted to manage your portfolio for retirement, and I said, hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin. It's done so great in the last 10 years. I'm going to put all of your money into Bitcoin in your retirement savings. Probably not a good idea. Or how about this? I'm going to manage your advertising campaign. And you know what? We've had TVs for 70 years. Forget that internet crap. I'm going to put all your money on TV ads. Not a good idea. How about this one? I'm going to manage your company. You know, we've had white guys like me running businesses for 200 years. Who cares if my company looks like this? WTF, right? Why? Why is it that the first two ideas are clearly stupid and nobody does it, but the third one, we failed to answer the question? I would argue that the reason for that is because of the lack of tools. We have tools that help us to quantify the diversity of assets in finance, in advertising, even in sports management. But we don't have that in HR. And if we cannot quantify the value of the diversity of your tool, of your talent, of your human capital, you cannot optimize it. So I'm going to tell you about a methodology that I've developed that uses computer simulations to help companies understand the true business value of diversity. And I'm going to apply it to something that government should care about, which is affirmative action versus equal opportunity. Let me give you an example. This is actually a real live simulation that shows a company with 4 layers. The blue people are men and the yellow people are women. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a company that has 4 layers from entry level to executives, and it starts out being perfectly balanced. However, somebody comes in and says, you know, we like white guys better, so we're going to promote them over women. Let's see what happens. This is an actual simulation. You see people moving up, and some people disappear and turn gray. And what you see is that after 5 years of promoting people with a bias, you end up with a male-dominated company. Here it is, you have 80%, actually 91% people at the top that are male. And this looks very much like some companies that we've seen before. So now you might say, hey, you know what, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do unconscious bias training. I'm going to do diversity training. I'm going to remove all the biases. And then I'm going to promote people fairly, equal opportunity. Let's see what happens if we do that. So we begin with something like that, where we turn the biases off, and we start imbalanced and remove the biases, and we let this thing just evolve over time. And what you find is that after 5 years of simply removing the biases, virtually nothing happened. You still have a male-dominated company. And here it is. We now have 82% men at the top. Why are simulations so powerful? Because they make you realize obvious things. For example, you can't really see it from where you're sitting, but at the VP level, the second level from the top, there are 70% men and 30% women. If we promote fairly, every 10 VPs that get promoted, 7 of them will be men and 3 will be women. Guess what? It's going to take a really, really long time to fix the problem. In fact, with these simulations, I can show you that it can take more than 20 years to undo the damage that you do in 5 years. This is just a very, very trivial example, and I can show you some much more complex examples of this. But the bottom line is that if the question is equal opportunity or affirmative action, the answer is very clear. You need to have affirmative action. You have to have it. This is one example. There is more that I can give you. What I encourage you to do is to look at a couple of things that I'm doing right now. One of them is, as Don mentioned, I'm at City College. I've developed a center called the Quantitative Studies of Diversity and Inclusion. I've also launched a software company. It's a cloud-based platform that helps companies to plan, execute, and measure the diversity initiatives. And then finally, for those of you that are at CUNY, on March 29th of next year, we're organizing a CUNY Diversity and Inclusion Research Conference. Everybody from CUNY can attend for free. Anybody else, it's very inexpensive. Please look at that. My contact information is here. My hope is that 20 years from now, when people ask, is diversity a good thing, they will think that it's just as stupid a question as the question that we asked about Bitcoin and about advertising. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paolo. Thank you so much, all of our amazing speakers. Thank you so much. The borough president, the Brooklyn borough president is no longer here, but I thank him and his team so much for helping us do this here this evening. That's really a very special treat for us. Thank you so much, John Farmer and Microsoft, for once again helping our community and sponsoring and really helping us grow this event. Thank you, John. And grab a couple of drinks on your way out. We've only got a couple more minutes here, but grab a drink or a snack or whatever, and then I'll see you guys. Look out for our January CUNY Tech Meetup. Include your friends and tell them to sign up if you think they'd be interested, and have happy holidays, everyone.